Does. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Boulder Insight November Tableau Live session. I'm Heather Datillo, your co-host, along with my esteemed colleagues, Christy Clark and Sarah Heinrichsen, that are here with me as well today. So we're super excited to have you here. We know more and more people will be joining, and those of you that are joining us for the recording, we're so glad that you're joining as well. Um, So the agenda for today, as always, we'll handle submitted questions first. Then we'll open it up to live Q&A to anybody here. Sometimes I'll move that up and do that live Q&A throughout. So if you haven't submitted a question and you're just joining us, feel free to put the question in the chat and we'll keep a close eye on that. And then the other option is you may not have a question that you've come to the table with, but as we're presenting, you may have questions about what we're presenting on with the answers to the questions we have received. So feel free to come off mute, to put your questions in the chat. And as we get to your question, if you're here with us, we'd love for you to join us in any way you can. Keep in mind, we are recording. So if you want to share your screen, we allow that, but we don't want you to be sharing any data that your company would not want you sharing outside in the world, because it will be on our YouTube channel and accessible by folks. So you can explain it. We can use Superstore data to try to answer it, or talk it through. But just be aware that this is a recorded session. And then once we have the open Q&A, we'll do a little wrap up and talk about ways that we might be able to support you in the future as well. So why don't we get started? I know Julie is in the call. I did see that she joined. And Julie, I know the question that came in from you was where to begin. And when you're doing a Tableau dashboard. So I'm going to actually handle this question first. We have two ways that we go about handling the beginning of any process and kind of the way that we move through that process. The defined discovery template is something that we're going to put into the chat for you. We're also going to give you all access that are joining us live. You'll also have access to the Canva presentation in this as well. So we'll be adding these into the channel for you. So we do have a definition and discovery template. We often send this to our clients in advance of our kickoff meeting. And then we actually have separate columns for each of the different people joining from our team. So we use a whole team approach. So we have someone from client success that's on the call. We have somebody from the dev team that's on the call, another person from our UI UX team, our user interface, user experience, kind of the design side as well. So let me pull up the defined discovery template. Jordan just shared the Excel file for this. I'm going to be working from a Google Doc, so let me pull that up and show you all, just so you can help understand. But Julie, before I dive into the defined discovery process, if you want to come off mute and just explain, your question or your situation in particular, I can make sure I'm not going down a path that isn't what you need. So feel free to come off mute if you'd like. No pressure to if you don't want to. Oh, Julie. Okay, thanks, Jordan. I appreciate that. Okay, so the overview questions, we first just start with what's the project name? How do we want to communicate? Because we're working with clients that aren't normally our internal clients, they're external clients, understanding if there's any hard deadlines, funding cycles, things we should know, and any important dates. So just kind of knowing that, even if this is an internal project, that's really helpful to know. Some people prefer Slack internally, others prefer email or other ways to communicate. So that's always helpful. Then we move into, and let me actually open up my tool that'll allow me to zoom. Then we start moving into big picture questions. Some of the key things, and you'll notice when I move to the image of the visual analysis process, at the center of that process is the audience. So the first thing we always want to understand is who's the audience for the dashboard. who will be using these dashboards? What do they do? What kind of decisions do they make? So understanding, is this a C-level group? Oops, sorry. Or is this, data analyst? Is this the marketing team? Just understanding what their role is. And then we really want to start moving into, when someone comes to use this dashboard, what do you want them to see and do? So why are we building this? What's the key questions that we want to be asking? So it's really about that question of, what question are they trying to answer, and what actions could be taken, or what could change based on any of these shifts in behaviors with the answers they could get from the dashboard. Then we start moving into, how does it impact the overall organization, not just your end users, but the whole organization as a whole. How does this fit with that? What are the problems you're trying to solve, or are you facing currently, that this dashboard would address? And what are the supporting questions you'd like to answer around your main issues? So typically what we do, and then of course, success metrics. What are your key performance indicators? Some people have different names for those, but really, what are those key success metrics that you're looking at to make sure you're performing in the way that you'd expect? Or if this is looking at things that aren't performing, and you're looking at tickets that are coming in, and how to improve those, and respond to those, you'll want to be able to call them out. So while we're meeting, this is one that I said we could send to the client. We actually have a column for each of the different people, the dev team, the client success team, the UX team, where they're filling in their answers. And then after this, we meet as a team and talk through what we all heard from that, and the approach that we want to take going forward. So this document that we gave you, you can give this to the client in advance, so they're thinking about these things. It may be the first time anybody's asked them any of these questions. So this is a great way to then tie in what the client has to say to the notes that you've taken and what you've heard throughout. We then move into data source questions and UX basic questions. So is there already a Tableau workbook that exists that we're starting from? Can you tell us all of the data sources that you're using? Are these databases? Does somebody have a secret flat file, an Excel file or CSV on their computer, or a Google Doc that they're only using, that they kind of download things from the dashboard that exists currently, and then they do some tweaks to it, but you don't have access to that file? You want to know those things. If you need to get access to data sources you don't have access to, who's the person you should contact around that? If it's your own company, you typically know that, but sometimes they're really big companies. You don't know who owns that data source that they may have published but haven't shared with you to servers. So there's things to go through with that. Who are the people who can guide you through the data sources above? How often are the data sources update? Is this going to be a live connection or an extract? So knowing that can be really helpful. And then, how are you sharing the dashboards and the content with end users? Sometimes some of our nonprofit clients are sharing these as PDFs with the board, and the board is not going to be clicking and interacting with the dashboard. So we have to think about how we want to design that as a PowerPoint size. Is this a PDF document that should be designed differently? Instead of portrait, should it be landscape? Those sorts of things to be thinking through. And then we lean into UX and basic questions. So if there's a style guide, we want to be able to leverage the style guide. If some companies don't have those, or they're in the process of revising those and they don't want to use that, so we can go to your websites and look for that feel and brand of it. Do you have inspiration dashboards that you want that you really want this dashboard to look like? You've gone to Tableau Public, or you've seen some on LinkedIn, or you've seen them in magazines. If you have those screenshots, that can really help you get that inspiration for what they're looking for, and we can see what's possible with the data that you have. Again, will you be creating screenshots, PDFs, dashboard for presentations? How will this be interactive with the audience? Do you want to see information as percentages or in counted figures? It's often both that we will do that. Understanding the time periods. Do you want to look at days, months, quarters, rolling 12? And then again, going back to those key metrics in the data source. How do those key metrics metrics, what are those key metrics you're going to want, and how should we be showing those in the dashboard? And then finally, we end with some education questions around how many people would have to be trained in using the dashboard we build for you? Do you want your internal team to receive education and how to build this within Tableau if they want to make changes to it, or how to update the data source and maintain that? And just what level of autonomy would you like your team to have? Sometimes we come in as consultants and they say, do it all, hand it over to us, we'll take it from here. Other times they say, we just want you to maintain it going forward, and we just need to know how to interact with it. So let me zoom back out and pause there, and let's just see if anyone has any questions so far about the define discovery template. That again is in the chat, and you can download that as an Excel file. Mine right now is a Google Doc because we live in the Google sphere here at Boulder Insight. Okay. Any questions? And again, feel free to come off mute if you do, or put it in the chat. All right. Then once we have these, then we call this our visual analysis process. And this is really inspired by the visual analytics course from Tableau that I used to teach. And Sarah actually, I believe, wrote most of that curriculum. Am I correct there, Sarah?
Yes, ma'am.
It's my favorite course I ever got to teach that in fundamentals. I love fundamentals too. So we took what we taught from the visual analytics course over the years, and we kind of made it our own. And this is something that we've talked about in webinars with Carasoft on stage at TC as well. But this visual analysis process can be super helpful as well. So you've got these questions answered. You have the audience at the center, and you're thinking about what are the key questions that they're trying to answer, getting that data, which is similar to just what we did in this define discovery process. What's the story we're trying to tell? And we often use our Tableau templates or skins to try to put shading and things in the background to draw your eye towards those pieces so people understand the flow and how you're going to build it. So I can get into deeper things around Z patterns and F patterns and how to craft your dashboards. Then you build your vizzes. And always in each of these steps, we're going back to the audience. So understanding, do you have a CFO who's colorblind? You want to be careful not to put things in red and green then. Do you have a CEO who hates pie charts? Don't build a pie chart then. Maybe a donut chart. Go to another dessert chart that might be a little bit better, or use a different chart to be able to show that. As you're working through and building the dashboard, you again go back to the audience, keeping them in mind. And are you starting to have insights as you build it? So if there's something you're seeing that you may not have expected, that's an outlier, that's something that was eye-opening to you, you want to go back to your audience again. If you have that one point person in particular or a small team, and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. For instance, for one of the former nonprofits that I worked with, we realized our top selling product wasn't making profit any longer. That when we first priced that, we were fulfilling orders with volunteers. We grew tremendously as a nonprofit. We were fulfilling it with staff, and we weren't covering our costs. So did you know you're not making profit on the beaded bracelet that we had? So we want to make sure you're going back and forth. And then again, the whole point of doing visual analysis is that you start with a question, you hopefully end with answers to that question and actions that you're going to take based on that. Now that we know that that bracelet was not making profit, what actions are we going to take? Well, we took the action to either decide we want to keep it there and we know we're covering our cost and our other jewelry, or we need to increase the price a little bit, and we ended up increasing the price. So hopefully, Julie, I know you had to drop. I hope that answers your question. And if you have any other ones, just let us know. Anybody here on the call live, let me know if this all made sense. Give me a one or a thumbs up if this is making sense to you, or if that was just a whole bunch of words from me right now. Give me a two if it doesn't, and let me know if you'd like me to go into deeper detail. One in the chat if it's all good. Two if you have more questions. All right. Next question we have is from Alicia. So this one is all about formatting and sizing. So I think this one goes over to Christy next. Is that correct?
It does. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Sure thing. And I don't see Alicia live with us, so I don't think we'll have more clarification on it, but let's go with what we think she's been
Okay.
asking.
Well, if anyone else has dashboard questions, because there were several, we're going to start here. So we're going to use this dashboard to answer a few of the dashboard questions that came through. So for the first one on formatting and sizing, what you'll notice over here on the left-hand side when you start building your dashboards is you're able to set a size for the dashboard. Our team typically uses PowerPoint because that makes it really easy for your end users to export these out as slides, embed them in other places, and even just export them for paper printouts if they need to. Not that we want to be exporting flat images of our dashboards, better to send people out to them, but it does tend to fit on the screen fairly well. Now, as I bring this up, you'll notice on this sizing area that you've got the ability to say, hey, let's go ahead and set the size automatically, where it's going to fill in the space exactly the way you need it, or even setting it within a range. My very strong opinion on this is don't. A couple of reasons. One, you'll notice when you start getting a little bit more refined with your formatting, like putting images in the background, those don't resize with everything staying in the same place above them quite as well. So for that alone, if you do want to get a little bit more advanced in your layout, it gets a little bit harder to let it automatically adjust on sizing. But I would say arguably the more important reason is performance. In Tableau, if you're not aware of this, this is one of my favorite things. In settings and preferences, you have the ability to do a performance recording. So if you have a dashboard that's running slow, the performance recording, when you run that, will tell you what's going slow. And slowness tends to fall into two main categories. The data is slow to retrieve, or the data is slow to display. And if your sizing is set to allow it to adjust automatically or adjust within a range, it's going to take longer because every time that report runs, Tableau's got to look at what the browser is that's holding the information and resize everything. So it can't cache the layout to use it again the next time that report is looked at. So for that reason alone, using a fixed size tends to be a really good idea. Now, as far as deciding what size to put out there, like I said, we tend to use PowerPoint. Most places I've worked have tended to use PowerPoint, but the big thing to do is just know how are your end users looking at this. If every dashboard you're building is viewed on tiny laptop screens, because everyone you work with is really remote, you might want to size that down so it fits a little bit more easily. But if you're in environments where everyone's got giant multiple monitors, then you can afford to go a little bit larger. So sizing should be fixed, and sizing should be set to accommodate how your end users are viewing the report. Last but not least, do notice that Tableau allows you to set sizing differently for different environments. I'm not going to go into this too much, but whenever someone comes out to Tableau server, the server looks at the size of the screen available, the resolution that's available for display. And so if you go through and create different layouts for different devices, and you can do desktop, tablet, and phone, then the server will deliver to the end user one that is customized to their particular environment. So if you do have a huge variety in how folks are viewing your dashboard, that device preview area can be very useful for setting that up. So that was the first piece on sizing. As far as formatting, I am going to go with the idea of readability and refer back to a little bit that Heather was talking about earlier about those F and Z patterns. Essentially, anytime we read something, we read in English, if we're reading in English, left to right, top to bottom. So our eyes are trained to start right up here and then start scanning across either in a Z or kind of an F formation. So for that reason, when you're laying out your dashboard, it's a really, really good idea to make sure that your KPIs, your most important things, your big controls are up here in the left where the eye is going to go to first. So noticing here across the top, we have the controls or the tabs that are telling us how we're doing in different areas. And then this allows us, as we click through, to let that the actions, the interactivity flow downstream. And that allows it to be a little bit more useful to our end users when they can see that everything is flowing in the same direction that they would read. Think of it like a topic sentence, and that's actually how I like to structure a lot of my dashboards. When we go to that story portion that Heather was mentioning in interactive dashboard, when we're iterating on building our dashboards, to me, I'll often write paragraphs. So the topic sentence is going to be whatever I have across the top, and then the details drill in underneath that. So in this particular case, I might have a paragraph about my sales, and it turned out that that same paragraph was mirrored under profit, discounts, and units. And by clicking on each one of these, we can tell each of those stories separately. And using things like tooltips, we can bubble up pieces underneath. So for me, a lot of the idea on layout is making sure that we have placed our information where it fits into that story, with that upper section being our topics, our first sentence in that paragraph, and then everything else underneath being details. If you find your story has 7 paragraphs, you often have 7 dashboards, or you need to incorporate some level of interactivity, like we see here, that allows you to drill into each separate story. So those are the main pieces I wanted to mention on formatting or sizing. We are going to cover a bit more on how we show and hide different items at different points in time. But are there any other questions around formatting or sizing a dashboard in general? Okay, then I'll go ahead and stop my share and turn this back on over to Heather as we move on to our next section. Oops, and Heather, you're on. Oh, there we go. Heather, you're on mute right now if you're saying anything.
Thank you. And Christy, I'll be coming back to you as well with this next question. And Neetu is on the call as well today, I believe. Oh, I think she needed to drop, it looks like. But Neetu had joined us earlier on. But this is a question around visual swapping, filters in the container. So ways to perform visual swaps. So sheet swapping using dynamic zone visibility, measure swapping within a single view, using Tableau Agent. That's something available between 2025 and later. And then I also want to pull up, we had a question from Niat, I hope I'm saying this right, Niachi, that also submitted one wanting to know about dynamic dashboard. So I think, Christy, you can actually get both of those, yeah, both of those questions as well. So I will
Awesome.
hide my screen and
Okay. So sneaking back on over, I'm going to stay with the same dashboard. And this one does it a little bit fancier than I think is really necessary, but I'm going to go ahead and start with that idea of swapping out measures. Because what I want you to notice is when we start off on total sales, we can see that we've got our sales by day, our sales by category, and then we're seeing our sales values listed here. But when I click over on something like total profit, it swaps all of that out. And now we're seeing our profit information below. So we can allow Tableau to swap out the measures and swap that story out fairly efficiently. So in order to set this up, you need a couple of things. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a worksheet and just build a real simple view to start us off. Let's go ahead and do segment, and I'm going to stop there. So my goal on this particular view is to allow my end users to see not just our sales by segment, but to switch over and be able to see sales, discount, profit, whichever value they would like. And all of this starts with a parameter, because parameters let us take what's in our end user's head, so what I want to see, and move it into the Tableau dashboard. So in this particular case, I have a parameter here called selected variable, which we created by coming up to the top and choosing create parameter. When that opens up, and I'm just going to shortcut do this cooking show style. I cannot get my syllables out in the right order. But what you end up having is you end up having a parameter. We've got our name here. The data type is string. And in my case, because I'm allowing the updates to happen from anywhere, it allows all values. Now I'm going to simplify this a little bit by starting from the beginning and just creating a parameter. And I'll just call this one select metric. Now with select metric, again, I'm going to keep this to a string value, and I want to give folks the choice to choose between profit, sales, and quantity. Or let's just keep it simple and we'll do profit, and then we'll also do sales. So you'll notice that as I'm typing into the value area of this list, it's pre-populating the display as. Reason that matters is my calculations, which I'll use to bring this parameter in, are going to use our value, whereas the display as is what the end user sees. So I might want to have the value on my calculation be nice and short because I don't like typing, but I want this to display as total profit and maybe total sales so that it makes a little bit more sense to my end users. So we don't have to have what our end users see match up with what we're using in our calculations. So now that I've built this calculation called select metric and click OK, Tableau creates it over here on the left-hand side in my parameters section. Now that I'm ready to start building my calculation, instead of just dragging one of my measures on up to columns, what I'll do instead is use my down arrow and create a calculated field. So this calculation is going to replace any individual field up here on my column shelf. And I'll just go ahead and call this my dynamic measure. I think I spelled that all right. I like to use case statements because they tend to be really efficient. And so in the case of my parameter, which was select metric, when we evaluate that and notice that my parameter, when I choose it, comes in as purple instead of orange like most of our fields. Well, when that is the word profit, so when that's the value from that list, then I want to have the sum of profit, sum of current profit. And when that value is sales, then I want the sum of current sales. So it's as simple as just a logic statement that we end when we have all of the different choices in available. So when I click OK, Tableau creates my little dynamic measure with its equal sign telling me it's a calculated field, and I can bring that into the view wherever I like. So now, as we take a look, we're seeing our segments, in this case by maybe profit, maybe sales. We don't really know. But if we right click on our parameter and show it over here on the right hand side, we can now see that it is total profit. And if I switch that over to total sales, you should see your axis and everything else update. Now, in my case, everything stayed in the same order. And if I want these segments in the same order, hey, that's great. But I can also go ahead and sort the values so that we can sort those segments. Now, even though I'm on total sales when I did that sort, it's sorting based on dynamic measure. So if I change that on over to profit, you'll notice that our segments can move around if they need to end up showing the different order. Now, last but not least, I do like to update my titles to include that information. So if I double click on my title, I can switch this on over and say, hey, instead of just giving this sheet name, we can go ahead and insert our parameter name. So there's that parameter, select metric. And in this particular case, it's going to be using the display as value. So as we make our switches, we can see our total profit and our total sales value switch. Now that one was the first one on selecting measures. You'll notice that that same thing is happening here inside the workbook. We're clicking on any one of these tabs or views across the top is helping that to swap. We're not going to go all the way in, but essentially that uses a parameter action. So instead of having to use a drop down, I can use one of my sheets to update that same parameter and pass in the word profit, pass in the word sales, so that we see the update throughout. Any questions on that portion, swapping out the measures?
Not from me, but I do want to let people know we've done a webinar with Carasoft recently as well, where Christy goes into a whole lot more detail on each of these questions that we're covering today. So I just put that link in. It's a free webinar. You just have to put your information in to be able to access it. So thought you may be interested in that. So thank you, Christy. You're doing a great job. Keep on keeping on.
Well, thank you. Next big piece was mentioning wanting to be able to swap out entire charts, including their filters. So if we want to swap out entire charts, including their filters, parameters don't go all the way we need them to do because the parameter itself doesn't let us change anything other than the values within the chart without taking one other step. So for the other step, just noticing up here across the top how I have time period custom. And so we can enter a start date and an end date. By the same token, if we change this to time period week, you'll notice that we don't have that start date anymore. So this uses a function known as dynamic zone visibility, which says, hey, we want to sometimes turn everything off or everything on. And so instead of just swapping out what we see in a chart, we can use those parameters we just talked about, and we can use those to adjust the filters showing as well. So coming back on over, let's see, how do I want to take a look at this one? Let's say, for example, that I have this sales by segment chart right here. And notice that this particular chart has a region filter, and it's showing everything by individual segments. Now, if I switch over and take a look at my sales by region chart, well, for this particular chart, and we'll go ahead and expand it out to entire view. With this particular chart, we're looking at everything by those regions, but we want to be able to select individual segments. So my end users might want to choose if they're viewing the information by region or if they're viewing it by segment. So we can do the exact same thing. We can create a parameter that allows us to make those choices. Parameters are about the most useful thing there is. So in here, I can set this up to be region or segment. And of course, our list is going to do the exact same thing. And this is going to be our region. Oops, of course, we got to make it a string first. So again, we can do our region or we can do our segment. So with both of those in place, once again, I'll go ahead and show this parameter, but I'm going to set my swap up just a little bit differently because it's not a value that I want to swap out. I want to choose if I'm going to see sales by region as a whole with this segment filter, but if someone selected segment, we don't want to see either one of those. Now, to make this work, we're going to start off by building our dashboard. I'm going to go ahead and keep this nice and tiny because we're not bringing too much in. But you'll notice as we bring in our sales by region chart and we bring in our sales by segment, Tableau puts everything over here on the right-hand side. And in my case, I am going to just get rid of all of these other filters because the only ones I care about are going to be our current values. And there we go. So what I want to do is I want to be able to have this chart with the filter on top of it or this chart with the segment filter on top of it. And I can set it up by bringing in additional containers, but you know what? I tell you what, I think I'm actually going to keep this even more simple. I'm just going to keep the layout like this, and we'll just alter which filter shows up depending on the selections that we made. So when I have segment chosen, then I want this chart to show up with a region filter. So this is where dynamic zone visibility comes into play. To choose which one of these shows, I can come out to the layout section on the left-hand side. And within this, you'll notice you have the ability to control visibility using a value. Now, the value has to be at the database level. So it has to be something that is in the data, not calculated view by view. So we can't use aggregations, but we can use our parameter because my parameter either equals segment or it doesn't. So if I come back on out to any sheet, and I'll go ahead and start off on my sales by segment sheet, I can create a calculated field that uses that region or segment calculation, and I'm going to call this one show segment views. So from here, I will say region or segment. So I'm choosing my parameter, and that equals, in my case, segment. So whenever it equals segment, I want to see the segment view and the related filters. And I'll just click OK. Now I want the same setup for my region filter. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit and duplicate what I already built. And when I right click and edit it this time, I can change this over to say show region views. Now with all that set up, instead of segment, we'll have region. And now I have two true-false statements. No aggregations inside of them. The value simply is what it is. So when I click OK, we have show region and show segment views. Now my setup is done. I can come back over to my dashboard. And now when I go to control visibility using views with my little drop down, I can go through and tell it, hey, since this is the view that I have selected, whenever I have it on show segment views, we show it. Now that affects the view, but the really fun part is this is the filter that goes with it. So I can control visibility on that filter as well by choosing show segment views. Now, it doesn't seem like anything happened because my parameter was set to segment, but as soon as I switch that to region, you'll see that those two go away. And now if I take my sales by region and turn on that control visibility here, same thing, only I'll do this with the show region views. And I'll come over to the same filter and use that exact same formula to go ahead and show region views here as well. Now, with both of those set up, as we swap between the two values, we see that our charts can change. And depending on how we've set these up in our layout containers, we can allow those to fill up the entire space or not. In my case, I'm just leaving this as is, just demonstrating the ability to switch between those two. Actually, I can't just leave it like that. Oh my gosh, it's compulsive. I'm so sorry. In my case, I'll go ahead and take and make this float. But just noticing that when I float this, I can take up the exact same space where that region chart was living as well. So now it feels a little bit cleaner as I switch between them, and we don't see one ending up at the bottom. That is what we have on this particular section of the topic. Any questions, comments, or follow-up on those pieces?
I don't see any questions in the chat. This is your chance to come off mute if you do have questions, though.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing that and toss it back on over to you, Heather.
All righty, let me share my screen again and get the right screen to be showing. That would be helpful. I will move this one on over here. So Sarah, I think these next set of questions are going to you. So I know we have Deneen on the call, and we also have Nan that submitted a question around Tableau
Perfect.
Cloud.
Yep.
And I know Deneen's question, you're here. Do you want to come off mute and share more about your question, or would you like us to just jump in?
It really was just a generic question, more so um,
Perfect.
hints and tips or tricks. And it came about
Yep.
because I was trying to do a real quick proof of concept. And I said, oh, okay, Denise, just take this workbook that you have already here in Tableau Cloud. And, let's go ahead and try to do
Mhm.
something as it relates to Tableau Pulse. And I was instantly stopped because I had embedded data in that particular workbook.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to be as quick a proof of concept as I thought. So
Darn
Yep.
it.
so
Well, Sarah, I think you have some ideas around all this, so I'll let you go ahead and share your
Yes.
screen and help Deneen out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So just kind of set expectations. Or set maybe everybody on the same page. The very first thing with Tableau Pulse, and I'm trying to talk and also get my thing up and running at the same time. Um, the thing with Tableau Pulse is kind of where we were. Sorry, one second. I need to press the right buttons. There we go. Um, the thing with Tableau Pulse is that it starts with Tableau Cloud. So in order to have Tableau Pulse, which it sounds like, Deneen, you do have that, but in order to have Tableau Pulse, you have to have Tableau Cloud. So for all of the other people on the call who maybe aren't as familiar, Tableau Cloud is the hosted version of Tableau server. So you have your own site, you publish to your own site. The nice thing about it, the pro about it, is that Tableau manages the server. They deal with all of the on-prem servers that are required for having Tableau Cloud, but you just have your own secure site and you don't have to worry about all of the extra overhead that it would take to have your own physical servers. Um, Now, with Tableau Cloud, you can turn on Tableau Pulse. And again, just to level set, Tableau Pulse is the way that Tableau or the answer to um, the gap between experienced, educated data users and everyday users that want to make data-driven decisions. Um, a lot of the time, it requires a lot of extra knowledge and practice and experience to really understand how to use data and how to have data answer business questions that you might need it to. So, Tableau Pulse kind of bridges that gap. As I said, the requirements for having Tableau Pulse or using Tableau Pulse is you have to be on Tableau Cloud, and it is not available by default. You have to, your site admin has to go in and actually click the button and say enable Tableau Pulse. And there's some settings and things in there that you can change and do. You can set up Tableau Pulse for specific users or specific groups on your Tableau site. There's all sorts of different permissions that you can do with that. The second, and Deneen kind of hit on both of these, but the second requirement, the second major requirement is that it has to be a published data source. It can't be an embedded data source in a workbook. So you have to publish that data source to server or to cloud, excuse me, in order for Tableau Pulse to be able to work with that data source. That published data source needs to be a single data source. It can't be across database join or unions or things like that that you've developed within Tableau Desktop. It has, and so if you need cross database joins or unions to work with Tableau Pulse, you can use Tableau Prep to bring those things together to create that singular data source that you're then publishing to Tableau Cloud. Also, because the Tableau Pulse metrics are shown over time, your data has to have at least one date dimension or one date column. Best case scenario is that the date or that date or the records are updated regularly so that you are getting data every day, and that makes it a lot easier to use Tableau Pulse because it's showing over time. It can give you insights based on those trends. Also, the data should, and this is more of a best practice than a requirement, but it should have non-aggregated data, right? So you want some dimensions that you are going to be able to set up metrics on and insights on so that Pulse is giving you that information. Okay. There's a couple of resources here, obviously just kind of generic Tableau Pulse information. And then there's also this Tableau Pulse. It says admin, but essentially it's kind of how to get started with Tableau Pulse. There's a really great video that I got some of these requirements from in there. So you'll hear, if you go to that site and watch that video, you'll hear some of these requirements again, just to kind of solidify what's required and what might be best practices. That video is actually done by an old friend of mine, George Peck, who is a fantastic Tableau user he works for Tableau too.
And he's in
Um,
Colorado. He's in Fort
he
Collins.
is, he is, that's right. So that's kind of a bit of a overview, some best practices. Deneen, do you have any follow-up questions on that?
No, you've hit upon a couple of things that I encountered. So
Perfect.
it
Great.
helps me to know that, hey, I'm not going crazy.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
This
always good to
this
hear. It's
quick
always
proof
good to
of
hear that you're not
concept
going crazy. Yeah.
didn't go as I thought it would. But again, that was really all that I needed to hear.
Yeah. Great.
And also
Yeah.
the single data source is something that I wasn't aware of because I know that
Yep.
proof of concept, the workbook that I was using, I ended up publishing the data and it actually is two separate tables. So I'll take a look
Ah,
at Tableau Prep um,
yep.
to kind of merge that data and
Yep.
give it one data source. So thank you.
Yeah,
Yep. And then,
absolutely.
Deneen, one other word of warning just with the cloud migrations and things we've been doing from Tableau server to cloud. One of the other areas we sometimes see things not work the way you would expect it is with embedded calculations and things. So if you have
Mm,
LODs and even table calcs, sometimes those don't always work the way you'd expect at first. So there's, just know that you might run into some calculation stuff
okay.
as
And
well.
you mentioned Tableau server to Tableau cloud. So does that apply also going from Tableau desktop to Tableau cloud, Jenny?
Yeah, it may sometimes, you may see some of those just with Pulse, that
Okay.
some of those calculations may not work the way you expected. They don't always recognize them. So that there, we can look into ways to remedy that for you if you need to. But I know that we've run into some of those issues in cloud for Pulse before. Pulse really likes it to be published in extract based data sources, and for calculations, if they're embedded into it, sometimes those don't work as well too. So, all right,
Thank you.
sure thing. And
Yeah.
Miss Sarah, I
I,
think the next set
I'll
of
pass it
questions
back to
go to
you. Yep.
you.
Oh, they
Actually, if
do.
you're in
That's right.
it, you can just keep on going. We have a
I
question from
can.
Greg, and
Right.
this was about map layers. So
Hmm.
you have about 12 minutes left. I'll need
Wow.
about five. So
Okay.
I don't know how deep we can go into
Yeah,
this.
I won't go
This could be
super
a whole
deep.
webinar.
Um, yeah, exactly. There's a lot that you can do with this. And again, we have some really great resources here. Um, the thing I will say, and for someone who has been using Tableau for about 10 years, a little over 10 years now, um, kind of map layers. I don't know if too many people on the call remember back to, um, I always tried to create like a dual axis map where you're like, okay, I want to put region on one, and then I want to put, city on the other, or state on the other, region and state, something like that. So um, map layers are kind of a easier way than doing those dual axis charts. You do have to have geographic data for each of those layers. I have a workbook that I downloaded. It's from one of the I just downloaded it from one of the resources that we linked. But this is kind of a great, this one has a lot of map layers. You can see that there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Um, seven different map layers. We have nature reserves, we have population, we have rail lines and stations, we have parks, we have housing, right? So there's lots and lots of map layers. And one of the things for me, again, being kind of a previous or a long time Tableau user, is, creating a very simple layered map, doing that dual axis map. I was like, well, how do we get all of these layers on here? And it's actually so easy. You just drag out and you drag your geographic field onto this marks layer, and it adds one of these marks cards for each of your layers. And then you can go into each of those layers just like a dual axis chart and modify that particular layer for it to be whatever it is that you need it to be. So there are points, right? We have some density, some density layers. We also just have some shape layers, or probably these circles, right? We have, oh, sorry, these are the parks, excuse me. So these are the different parks that are included. I think these are the trees, if I remember correctly. Um, so that's our shape. We have aquatic facilities, if I can find one. Oh, it's these little shape of the water. We have the rail lines, we have the nature reserves, which are more like filled maps. So this is just an incredible use of map layers and kind of shows the diversity that you can do, or the breadth of them, and how you can layer these different geographic locations on top of each other. And then you have marks cards for each, which, as we all know, with a dual axis chart, you can edit those marks separately. So that's just kind of the high level overview of our map layers. Any questions? I think the person that asked this question isn't on the call, but if anybody has any questions about this, please feel free to come off mute or type them in the chat.
So I have a question about the
Yes,
layer.
please.
It's
Yeah.
it's great. Sorry.
No,
Um,
please.
I've been using layers a lot, but
Nice.
the one issue that I encounter sometimes is when I'm trying to filter the map itself. Like I
Mm.
lose visibility to a layer, or I'm not getting exactly what I want to see when I begin to filter.
So if you're filtering on one of the specific um, types, like if I'm filtering on nature reserves and I only want to see certain nature reserves, you're losing the other map layers. Is that correct? Am I
Potentially,
understanding? Yeah.
potentially, yes.
Yeah. And that might, you, and Christy, this might, I think, I'm looking to Christy for backup, but what it sounds like to me is like maybe it's how you're bringing the data together.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the map layers specifically, but how that data is brought together.
Hmm.
And maybe a relationship uh, could
Yeah.
resolve that.
Okay. Okay.
Christy, does that sound
That
I'm
makes
gonna
right?
sense. That makes
admit,
sense because it is typically when I have separate data
Yeah.
sources
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
really, yeah, disconnected,
Yeah. I
from
don't
layer to
think,
layer. Okay.
and Christy, the only reason I'm asking for backup, I think I know what you're about to say, but it sounds more like a data issue than a map layer issue, I think
Yes.
is
Yes.
my point. Yeah.
yeah, I've been weirdly resistant to map layers. I can't quite explain it. Um, so I have actually avoided learning anything and everything about map layers possible. So I'm a
Just
terrible person.
geographically inept. We don't know.
Yes, yeah. I can't take a bus in the right direction, much less
Yeah.
layer a map properly. So,
Yeah,
No,
there we
it's
go.
okay. It's okay. I mean, for the most part, some of the things that I'm doing, it's only for visibility anyway. So, you create it and
Yeah.
you show it and then you move on.
And
But
well, and maybe using more of like a highlight feature instead of a filter might
hmm
get around what you're trying to do. Also, again, depending on how you've brought those different data sources together
hmm
is going to also determine how it's filtering.
absolutely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree, Sarah. I do think relationships will definitely help improve that. It sometimes can be if you're using these shape files in addition to, to
Yes,
point files and
Hmm.
things. That
Yeah.
can
exactly.
sometimes do it. And for the
Exactly.
filter itself, make sure you say apply to worksheets all using this data source if it's all from the same data source. But
Yeah,
Mm.
usually when you're using map layers, they're from different sources. So
exactly.
yeah.
That's it.
All
You hit
right.
it. Geospatial data
Cool.
and so forth. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah,
You're welcome.
absolutely. Happy to answer. Well, Heather, you have your 5 minutes
Okay,
on
that's
the dot.
perfect timing.
All
It is on
right.
the dot. So before I share my screen again, are there any other questions that have popped into your mind for anyone joining us live right now? All right, I don't see any. So if we don't have any open Q&A, I'm super excited about something we're launching in 2026, and I want to make sure a lot of our Tableau Live folks are coming to us with questions and looking for support with training. And so we are doing something with Christy, our amazing Christy that's been on the call today too, called project-based learning. So this can be for your teams. We're also considering offering this to the public. And the great thing about this is that It's live instruction. There's coaching, hands-on practice with your own data. And so if you're using your data in a public course and other people can't see it, we'll teach you how to anonymize that before the course begins and meet with you prior to that. You have 2-hour live virtual sessions. There's a structured development path. You get another hour of coaching and peer feedback sessions. So there's kind of office hours throughout that time, and then the ability to get async support throughout. It lasts for 6 to 8 weeks. We try to keep the cohort sizes smaller so we can really work closely with you. And unlike other training that you go through where you use training data and you get those foundations that are important, you actually are building upon those foundations. Or if you don't have them, we're helping you learn about that with your own data. You'll have a functioning Tableau dashboard at the end of the course. You'll be able to have some shared vocabulary across your team that's really helpful around being more data literate with your analytics data, some collaboration and some repeatable processes within your team, and just more fluency and confidence throughout. So we're super excited about this. If you're interested in more information, we have put in a one-pager PDF that's in the chat as well, and you can have more information there. The other thing that we can do, sometimes you just need some support. My Calendly link is here as well. You can just reach out and schedule some time with me. You'll let me know what questions you have, and I'll pull in anybody else from our team to try to help you get on track with things that can't wait till the December Tableau Live. So know you can reach out. And then you can also sign up for the December Tableau Live. It'll be our last Tableau Live of the year. We'd love for you to join us with that. And we always want to hear your feedback. So there is also a link to a survey, a very quick survey that takes a minute or two to let us know what types of topics you want to hear. If there's a way we can change the format or the way that we're doing anything, we'd always love to hear back from you. So as always, we thank you all so much. We are especially grateful in this season of Thanksgiving and gratitude. So we're just so grateful that you all continue to join us and you submit your questions and that you're engaged on these calls. So have a wonderful holiday if you celebrate that. If not, I hope that you have lovely times throughout November with family and friends and loved ones. And we wish you all the best, and we'll see you in December. Take care, everyone.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.